Hi, I'm Kirby Allison. I'm here in beautiful Havana, Cuba, on an absolutely brilliant day with two absolute legends in the cigar industry. Of course, we've got Max Gutmann, the exclusive importer of Cuban cigars into Mexico, the creator of La Casa del Habano concept, and also the creator of some of the most famous regionals to come into the market. We have Dag Holmboe of Pacific Cigars, one of the largest importers in the world and one of the most important distributors for the Asia-Pacific region. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me and for taking some time. And of course, one of the great virtues of the Habanos Festival is the fact that all the world converges on Cuba here in Havana for a week to indulge our shared passion for Cuban cigars. And you two, of course, not only have been around certainly longer than I, but have contributed significantly to a lot of these cigars that we enjoy so much today. So thank you for your time.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be being here. And I think that limited regional editions that Cuba came with in 2005, it was a great idea because, there's different countries that want special cigars, obviously not of the top brands, because the top brands you cannot touch, just from the lower part of the brands.
One of the most defining characteristics of Habanos cigars is the collectability. I mean, Doug, of course, you're in Asia. I mean, Asia has some of the largest collectors in the world. And this is something I feel like one only really sees in Cuban tobacco that is not found in New World.
It's probably because the Cuban cigars are very good at aging. So you get value for it by aging the Cuban cigars for a long time. They get more mellow, they get more, better in a way. And yes, you're right, there is some massive collections of cigars in Asia, and especially in Hong Kong and in China.
Yeah. What do you think it is that drives the collector and kind of collecting mentality? Is it
I think it's a bit of I think it's sort of a very traditional way of doing things in Hong Kong and in China. It's not only cigar, they collect wine, they collect whiskey, watches, cars, anything that you can collect. They are very, very keen on that sort of concept. It's good for us because cigars, they collect cigars.
Yeah.
Some of them probably have more cigars than they can ever smoke in a lifetime, but why not?
Well, that is certainly a problem enjoyed by few.
Yeah, very few.
But, to the point of aging, I mean, I think one of the beautiful characteristics of a Habano cigar is how it evolves with age. I mean, much like a fine wine, a French wine, whenever one commits themselves to aging, they open up this entire world of, flavors and nuances that you wouldn't necessarily find in a new cigar.
Yeah. Max was kind enough yesterday to offer me a Trinidad Fundadores 1998, and it was an amazing cigar.
And how would you describe it as smoking differently today, say perhaps compared to
Well, it's
new
more
one?
mellow, it's richer, I guess.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Definitely, it's like the wines. It changes with the time. You have to give it time. Wine, you give it enough time, and it changes the flavors. And I think in cigars, you see it much stronger, the change of flavors with the age. And I think that the thing of collecting regional or regular cigars, people who enjoy cigars, at the beginning you just wanted to have the cigars because for your collection, but with the time it's become that it's the price increase of the cigars, older cigars, has become unbelievable. So a lot of people want to buy to collect and to keep them because they know eventually the price is going to be very, very high. The more scarce the cigars are, the more the price goes up because there's no more boxes of, let's say, 98 Trinidad, there's no boxes of 80, whatever there is, like the price goes up. And there's a market for it, big market.
Yeah, and that is one of the beauties of the regional edition. They are made in limited quantities, so you can't get more than you get, and there was a phone.
Mm-hmm. One of the other virtues of the regionals, of course, is also the variety that it introduces into the market.
Yeah.
Right? From your two regions, of course, Asia Pacific and Mexico. Max I often describe as one of my cigar heroes. It was his Conde 54 that I think was the first regional.
The 109.
No, the Conde 54 is the first I smoked.
The
The
first you smoked.
109
Okay.
is unfortunately I had missed the 109 by the time I got to the Conde 54. But the Conde 54 was the first regional cigar I smoked in 2011 while visiting Mexico City with my wife for New Year's, and it just completely changed the world for me. I mean, the way that it was blended, you know, the nuance, and the way that it, you know, really was completely unique within the standard production portfolio really is one of the things that had me fall in love with cigars even more. You know, you two are veterans of this industry and really have been here for a lot of these moments that us younger cigar smokers like myself take for granted. I mean, Max, with the 109 and the Conde 54, and then, you know, Doug, some of your really famous regionals, can you describe a little bit of the story and kind of as a distributor and as someone that's actually creating these and coming up with these ideas, what that process looks like?
The 109, the decision of doing that cigar was because in 1995, which was the first, it was not even called a Festival del Habano. It was a dinner they had at the Melia Coiba, and they had celebrating the 150th anniversary of Partagás with a humidor that had 150 cigars, 50 Coronas Gordas, 50 Robustos, and 50 what they say the 109s, which is a cigar that they had not been producing in many, many years. So I was able to get one of those humidors, and I really, really enjoyed that cigar. And the way the form, you know, cabeza tumbada, they call it. It's not flat, it's not pyramid. And when we had the opportunity of making a cigar, I said, I'd like to see if we can have the 109. It's just the format, the 109. And now they are doing a little more, not too many anyway, but they are producing some.
Yeah, and whenever you asked Habanos for a 109 head, something that at that time wasn't in the standard production at all, what was their reaction? I mean, is there always a little bit of a, you know, a little creative tension, let's say, between the distributors and Habanos?
A little, every time there's a tension, because if it's normally, it's easier. But when it's something different, obviously they have the molds to do it, they have everything. But you have to work with them, fight with them, and tell them, look, it's a new thing, let's try it. And then finally they did it. It took a while. But
you're
very happy.
Persuasive.
Yeah, you have to insist and insist and insist. Otherwise, you don't go through.
Yeah. And what about you, Doug? I mean, as you you know, look back to, you know, these regional releases, which are all massive accomplishments in and of themselves, is there anything that you think of that you're particularly proud of, or that was particularly well received, or that has an interesting story behind?
Yeah, probably. Well, because we cover such a vast number of countries, we always can also find occasions or celebrations to make a cigar on a special occasion. I think one of the best we made was the Cuba-China 50th anniversary of diplomatic relationship, where we made a Bolivar jar and got the cigars packed by the Cubans, and it was a great success. And it's fun to do something around anniversaries. So we did one for Japan when they had a celebration of a diplomatic relationship. So we always find some special occasion if we can. Yeah. But because, again, like we cover so many countries, we could probably go on forever. I think we cover 32 countries, at least theoretically, so we could probably go on for a few years. And I know that, you know, Habanos technically limits each distributor, each country to 2 regionals a year, or how does that work? So you make one that is Asia Pacific and one that is for a country specific. For example, now we have the Thailand edition, which was launched in 2023. Mm-hmm. The Punch? The Punch Special Selection number 1. So that's, we just released it this year, actually. And and then we made, of course, the 30th anniversary of PCC, which also was a bit late in launching, that we are still now selling with a humidor, and we have made Ellie Bleu has made a humidor for us, and we have a watch, and we have a sort of a whole set that we are launching at the moment. So we do regional editions more or less every year, except when Habanos said we couldn't make one. Yeah, and there was a 2 or 3 year hiatus. Sorry? There was a 2 or 3 year, kind of gap. Yeah. And we're just now... I guess they were catching up. So. Yeah, we're just now back on schedule.
No, still they far before delivering what they were supposed to deliver since 2-3 years ago, and not regional, just the limited editions. Yeah. The way back with the limited editions. Mm-hmm. But back to the regional editions, it's not, you say you have to have 25,000 cigars, at least the first batch. But you could not have it like every year. At least in our case, we could have it for 2 years, the same brand, the same size, everything. After that, you could not keep doing those cigars anymore.
Okay.
It was like limited to that.
So like the 109, the first regional for Mexico.
There
What
were
year was that?
600
2007?
boxes, 600 boxes, and then we had another 600 boxes, and then they said, no, we cannot do more. We have to wait for another cigar. So that's when we came with the Conde 54.
Yeah. And the 54, I mean, again, this was, an absolute legend, often described as a unicorn. I mean, both the 109 and the Conde 54, off of the 109, how was it, or what was it that inspired you to then go for something a little bit shorter?
Because people started to like thicker rings. Because for a while, people didn't like it. And then people started wanting bigger cigar rings. That's why we decided to do the 54. There were not too many 54s at the time. And they were a little shorter. So we said, not a 109, so let's make something in between with the little short ones and these ones. So that's why we decided for this size.
And what's the story with the Edmundo Dante, right? Because this is a brand that really, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, has only been used on your limited edition cigars.
Yeah, because we import Montecristo cigars, but the Edmundo Dantes is like a sideline of the Montecristo cigars. And they created this line to start with another possibility of having another cigar in the market. And it's different than the regular Montecristo. But then they did it, I tell you, for 4 or 5 years, and then they said, no more. And that's why we changed for other things, other brands.
And is there much work put into the blending, right? That's differentiating, say, the Edmundo Dantes from the Montecristo? And how much influence does the distributors have on blend, or is it generally the standard blend of whatever that brand is?
It's a sort of combination. I think the distributor have some influence on it, and will be able to taste the cigars in advance. So there is some discussions. But of course, the master blenders is still the king of the game. They are the ones that make the final blend.
Yeah. And how far ahead will a distributor be working on their regionals? I mean, before it comes to market?
Half, I guess, because you have to put in your proposal a year in advance, if I recollect. So it's a year and a half.
Yeah.
But now there's a lot of demand for it. So every country now, everybody wants a regional brand. Everybody wants regional brand. So.
Because the beauty of it is it's in limited quantities. So you make it, it's sold, and then it's gone. And then when it's smoked, it's gone. And then you have to find some new ones. So.
Yeah. And it's also an opportunity to, offer, vitolas, sizes, other characteristics that box presentations that aren't commonly found in the standard production.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think, especially in Asia, people are they're very interested in Max cigars because he always comes up with something unique and special.
No, but how many regional cigars have you made? How many brands you've made?
Whoa,
I don't even remember.
I don't really recall how many.
You have a lot.
In 2005 was the first official year, but Hunters and Francao technically had something that was akin to a regional, but unofficial 1 or 2 years before. When was Pacific Cigars' first regional? How
Good
soon
question.
after that?
Must be the year after they launched it, I would guess.
Okay.
But like Max said, we made so many.
So many, it's hard to keep track. Yeah,
we certainly made nine. Well, we made more because we make 2 each, more or less each year.
Yeah.
So quite a few.
Yeah, so that's about 25 different, vitolas, possibly. Any favorites in your mind, Doug, that stand out? I mean, maybe not limited to your region, but looking across the world.
Well, it's a sort of special cigar, I think, which wasn't really a regional edition, but the Sir David cigar that was, well, it was a sad occasion because it was after David Tang passed away, and we suggested to Habanos to make a special edition in his memories. He was one of the big names in the cigar industry, and probably was the man that created the demand in China and in Asia Pacific in general. Yeah. So for me, that has a special meaning because I worked with David for 16 years. So it has a special meaning for me, at least.
Of course. He was the previous owner of Pacific Cigars.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And so this particular cigar, I mean, having been created kind of in his memory,
Yeah.
was this a particular format that he particularly enjoyed?
It was because he loved punch.
Okay.
So, and he always cut them in half.
Did he?
Which sort of irritated the Cubans somewhat because he sort of said it's too long to smoke in one go, so I cut it in half and smoked both halves.
Yeah, I mean, apparently Edward Sahakian does that with his Fundadores, which
Edward
is
doesn't. Edward doesn't.
impossible to even consider.
Exactly, but he liked to do it, so why not?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is, I guess, the ultimate rule of smoking is to smoke how you enjoy to smoke.
But you enjoy it.
Yeah, but they say it's a danger when you cut the cigar in half. The leaf might open, and
It
then
might
you,
open.
you,
That is the problem, isn't
It's
it?
not like the etiquette of smoking is not to cut the cigar. It's one of the no-nos.
Well, it's not might. I mean, it almost certainly will, right? Any other favorite regional releases from other regions outside your own that that?
I think the one you mentioned, Max, is the master of coming up with good cigars and good ideas. So, and he is very well known for being the father of regional editions.
But we only have made 5 regional editions, so.
Yeah, are you working on the next one?
We are working on the next time.
Okay.
And we're still waiting to see what Habanos tells you, and they have to ask in the meetings, and so.
Yeah.
It's not very fast the decision.
Yeah. In smaller regions like Mexico, I mean, will you not receive kind of a regional approval every year? Because Hunters and Francal, Pacific Cigars, I would imagine are doing these every year, year after year.
No, we don't do it every year, the regional edition. We do it like every 3 or 4 years, not every year. Because, there are so many other cigars that they are producing and so many other regional editions that now it's almost you have to be in line to be the next one to be approved, because at the beginning it was not too many people. Yeah. But with the time and the success of it, everybody wants now, everybody wants. Because especially it makes that people have to come or try to do whatever they can to get the boxes that are from other countries, so to be able to have them, If you collect, to have at least a box to smoke and a box to keep, because you age them and, you take care of them and they take care of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Cuba just released this year another regional. This is the Diplomaticos. And it's quite rare for Cuba to have a regional. I think there's only been, 2 or 3?
There have been a few, I think. I don't know how many they made, but they must have made 3 or 4 at least, I think.
Have you had a chance to look at the Diplomaticos?
No.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the beauties of being here in Havana, of course, is, the opportunity to try to acquire some cigars. And this, goes back to the pursuit. One of the challenges of being in Cuba is trying to acquire some cigars. It's not always guaranteed, the availability of anything here.
No.
But I've been very lucky.
I haven't seen it before either, so
Okay.
First time I see it.
Yeah. As you reflect back on your careers, right? I mean, you two gentlemen have known each other.
Are you indicating that we are old or something?
No.
Are you hinting?
Wise and experienced, and I had the great fortune of getting in, whenever prices used to be, a little bit different than today. But as you two return to Havana, what does being in Havana represent to the two of you? I mean, is it something you look forward to? Is it something that you find relaxing, or is it at the end of the day still work and it's busy?
I think the festival is rather unique because you get to meet so many people, old friends and new friends for that matter, that come here once a year, and you meet and you congregate and you talk about cigars and you taste cigars and you have a lot of fun. So it is a very unique experience. You come other times of the year more for professional reasons and work, but this is more a social event than anything else.
This particular event, but normally when you have to come with Habanos, it used to be much easier, more relaxed. But today, with everything is quickly, you do get a little stressed because you have to have the meetings and the change with the meetings, and it's getting a little difficult. But coming to Cuba, it's fantastic. Just the idea of coming when you see all the palm trees as you land in Cuba and everything. It's a pleasure, really. We are so lucky to be able to be in this business that the pleasure it gives you is fantastic.
Max, what initially got you into cigars? I mean, how did you? I mean, you're a man that is, very clearly in love with cigars. I mean, you're passionate.
I used to smoke cigarettes many years ago. And one day we had a French Moroccan brother-in-law I'd smoke cigars, 8, 10 cigars a day. And I said, why do you, I mean, I can understand. I said, try my cigar, try a cigar. And he gave me a cigar, Cuban cigar, Partagás Lusitania. First cigar in my life. Really? And I lit it, and I said, no, it's really, I didn't like it because it was my first cigar. I said, no, it's too big for me. No. Next day, he offered me an Epicure number 2, Hoyo de Monterrey, and I really thought it was so smooth. And I said, you know, this is my thing. I really enjoy the cigar. Forget the cigarettes anymore. And then when I came back to Mexico, I tried to buy Cuban cigars, and there were no Cuban cigars in Mexico. They had, in the duty-free, you could only buy a Montecristo Special 1 and number 2 from time to time. It was $100 a box, and not always they had it. So that's when a friend of mine started coming to Cuba for all the kinds of work.
What year was that?
In 88. And then I said, you know, bring me some box of cigars. And he put me 3, 4 boxes, and he'd bring me some more. And then he brought me one day the catalog of Cuba Tobacco, you know, the catalog they had. And I was like a little child, and I want one of each, you know. And then he brought me a suitcase. And then I said, you know what, let's try to see if we can do something to have cigars, Cuban cigars in Mexico. And that's where the idea started.
And what year was the first, did you open your first shop?
December the 1st of 1990.
1990.
And it was in Cancun.
Okay.
Because they wanted to have close to Cuba, because they had already the problem with Davidoff, whatever, and they just wanted to make sure that it was the first franchise they would give for a house, no? And
yeah.
That's how we started.
Yeah. What about you, Doug? I mean, how did you initially get into cigars?
Well, Cuban cigars when I lived here, of course. Well, I smoked cigars before, but I lived here in the 90s.
Where were you in Cuba doing?
Burma Castrol. It was a lubricant company, engine oil.
Okay.
That, they had a subsidiary that I was running here. And then I joined BP. Nothing to do with cigars, for sure. And but just by chance, I got introduced to David Tang, and he was looking for a CEO, and I was fed up of what I was doing. And 6 months later, I moved to Hong Kong.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So your introduction to the world of Cuban cigars really was largely professional.
Well, yes and no. I smoked them when I lived here, of course.
Okay.
I mean, that was inevitable. But on a professional level, yeah, when I went to Asia, I had no experience about selling Cuban cigars, that's for sure, or any cigars for that matter.
Yeah. What is it? I mean, you know, the world has in some ways changed so much. I mean, we have a just absolute plethora of new world cigars coming out of the market. But Cuban cigars seemingly still stand apart, you know, singularly as something completely above the rest. What is it that you think that makes Cuban tobacco and a Habanos cigar so much better than everything else that's out there? Special, so much more special.
Well, I guess, I mean, when you think about it, we talk about Cuban cigars, but the tobacco is grown in a very, very small part of Cuba. And it is that Pinar del Rio region that is unique with its, the earth, the weather. And I think it's a heritage that the Cubans have had for a long time, is that they make very special cigars. And everybody has tried to copy them over the years, but they haven't managed, really.
Yeah, it's a microclimate. You know, you go to Pinar del Rio in the morning at 5:36, you see like the rain, a little rainy, some drops coming out. I mean, it's a spectacle to see Pinar del Rio in the morning. And it's a very small region, actually, where they make the cigars, because there's a lot of places that they produce tobacco in Cuba, but they are not for export. Yeah. They are not the quality to export, so it's just the thing from Pinar del Rio that they export. But it definitely has something. Like the best cotton in the world comes from Egypt, the cognac comes from France, you know, tequila is from Jalisco, and that's what it is.
Well, there's also a really important cultural component in that, you know, Cuba's been cultivating tobacco since before the Spanish arrived. Whenever, you know, Columbus arrived, you know, there's notes in his journal of, you know, the indigenous, you know, with large kind of rolled cohibas is what they called them, you know, in their mouth. You know, I find that whenever I'm going around to the fincas, to the farms, to the factories, you know, that the Cuban people still put so much pride into these cigars. Yeah. And, you know, somehow it seems like, you know, that spirit, that pride is imparted on these before they leave the country and are shared with the rest of us.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, there is a long, long tradition of producing handmade cigars in Cuba, and that tradition has gone from one generation to the other, and it's rather unique, I think. And I think the way it is, the political system and the way that it's structured has helped as well, because it's commercial, but at the same time a relatively controlled industry. Yes. So they sort of they don't have factories popping up left, right, and center, making cigars for the moment. They are in it for the long term, and that probably has helped them a lot over the years.
What else? I mean, what other moments? I mean, we had dinner last night. I mean, hearing Max and hearing you kind of talk through some of your memories over the years in Cuba is just, I mean, it's living history. I mean, what you men have witnessed. You know, what is it that, again, whenever you reflect back on to, you think, you know, this is something that makes Cuba and makes Cuban cigars so special? Anything that comes out?
In the events, in the festivals that we've had for so many years, like the big point was at the end of the dinner, probably the comandante used to show up, you know, before the auction. You know, that gave such a strength when he would come, because, you know, everybody, he's coming, he's not coming. And then when he appeared, you know, everybody could not believe it. And then he was up there, and when people started watching, first of all, the price of cigars went up, the humidors, when he was there.
For the auctions, yeah.
Yeah, of course. And then you stand up and you talk to him, and, you know, you have a little talk with him, and it's interesting. It's very impressive. I mean, when he starts to speak in the festivals, I mean, everybody was like, he used to be a fabulous speaker.
And this year, Trinidad is celebrating its 55th anniversary. Yeah. I mean, a cigar that was created in almost complete secrecy alongside Cohiba at El Aguito. What are your thoughts on Trinidad in terms of its representation to the Cuban people and for Cuba to the world?
Well, it's a brand that was created, like you said, as a sort of brand that was not really a brand. It was for gifting and all this. And then they cleverly made it commercially available. And in Asia, it is extremely popular. It is a very, very popular brand. And I know in Europe it's less popular to some degree, but in Asia it's a very, very up there with the Cohiba.
Yeah. You know, are people that really favor Trinidad, are they different smokers?
No, I don't think so. I think they're the same. Well, we have one with us in this group that we bring from Asia now, Ann Cooley, and she is very much a Trinidad fan, Fundadores fan. And that's how I met her.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
First lady or first smoker I met in Hong Kong. I went to a conference. I had just been there for 3 months, and I saw this rather small lady with a very big Cuban cigars. I thought, okay, go over and talk to her. That was 22 years ago, so a little anecdote. But
and you know, Max, you of course were there for the
for a while. You know, the Trinidad that used to be for presents to prime ministers, to kings, to whatever. It was a different ring. It was a 38 gauge ring, the Trinidad original. And everybody started to say, I would like to buy it. Everybody wanted Trinidad. All the world wanted Trinidad. So when Linares took over the presidency of Habanos, Cuba Tobacco still, we always insisted, why don't we try to make it a Trinidad? People want to try the Trinidad, at least to try it. And he helped a lot. He worked very much with the government to finally commercialize the Trinidades. But then they changed from the ring 38 to ring 40. So that was the first cigars were already ring 40.
But you said, I remember yesterday we talked about it, I think, that one of the clever things with Trinidad is that it's a limited number of vitolas. It's not sort of gone completely wild. It still is a limited number of vitolas that I think is right for the brand.
I mean, in some ways you could claim it's even more exclusive than Cohiba. I mean, we were trying to count the number of standard production Cohiba vitolas, and I mean, we had to make several attempts to get to the right number, which I think is 20. You know, whereas with Trinidad, I mean, it's what, 5 or 6 vitolas? I mean, it's a very focused
and now,
brand.
Because there was only one.
And it was
only one, yeah.
Only the Fundadores.
Yeah. Well, this, I mean, Max, you brought this cigar. Of course, this is from your private collection. One of the original 1998 Fundadores from a wooden cabinet.
No, not varnished. It was
unvarnished.
Unvarnished.
Which is another distinction that collectors will make on the Fundadores, correct? Varnished versus unvarnished.
So you see it immediately, if it's unvarnished, you know. And besides, you can turn the box. At the time, you had all this, the Cuban codes they had for the years, which for many years nobody knew about it, except probably some of the distributors, and nobody really knew what it said. Today they put the year, so it's easy to know what year is it. But at the time, it didn't have that. But it was the first one, the Fundadores, and then they took away the Trinidad for a while.
Yeah.
A couple of years, they took it out of the market, and then
they came back.
They came back.
What was your first impression whenever you smoked a Fundadora?
I thought it was not going to draw well because it's a very difficult cigar to make. It's very difficult, and I thought, but the draw was fab. Since the first one I've had, I never ever had a problem with the Trinidad, ever.
Yeah.
With the draw, nothing.
And it's a unique vitola. I mean, Lanceros, right, aren't very common. It's a very elegant vitola, and somehow, despite the trend towards thicker ring gauges, the Fundadores has still stood the test of time.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it's still one of the classic of Habanos, I think, or Cuban cigars in general, and
Yeah.
still very sought after. Max is very lucky that he still has some boxes of it. Not many people have that at the moment.
But
how did these smoke whenever you first, smoked one?
It smoked beautiful. I mean, the smell of it, to the palate was fantastic. The blend they had in the tobacco, it just made it so enjoyable that you said, you didn't want to finish it because although it's a very long but very thin cigar, you didn't want to finish it because it was really, really good. And I think it stayed like that. The quality has been always
been a good quality.
Always.
Yeah, it's an absolutely beautiful cigar. What else about, last night you were kind of describing, the dinner of the century. And this was that moment where Trinidad, first was introduced to a wider audience.
The dinner of the century in Paris.
In Paris.
That was an incredible. It was only 150 people. All. That's all. It was 150
Extraordinary.
people. Which is.
What I would pay to travel back in time and be at that dinner.
And they had made special boxes for that dinner of coibas with 50 cigars, of Trinidad with 50 cigars, and they had also the coiba pyramids and the coiba A, all in boxes of 50. So they had never been seen before, those cigars. So when the auction started, it was very, very, very popular. Although there was not too many people, but the people who were there really were wishing to be able to get them, and they did get them from a very high price at the time.
At
the time, it was, I think,
bargains
the box
by these
was
today's
$12,000, which at the time, $12,000 for a box of cigars was like unheard of. It was really crazy. All signed, so it was.
And how was Trinidad received relative to Cohiba? Because by that time, Cohiba had been in the market for 12 years. Trinidad had yet to even be launched as a brand available to the public.
No, but it was the cigar of the Commandante, only for presents. So everybody wanted to try what he used for
It was
presents.
a lot of mystique around the brand and the cigar, and there was a whole story around it, and people were very excited when it was then launched.
In the Asia-Pacific region, you have some of the largest collectors in the world. There's no question that Cohiba is probably the most collectible cigar. But Trinidad's, still hold a special place.
That cigar is very collectible.
Well, this one is exceptionally collectible.
Exception, but the other Trinidad as well, because they do age very well. And people do know that, and therefore they are more than happy to keep them for 10, 15, 20 years.
But looking at the current portfolio, maybe looking kind of into the future, where do you see Trinidad's position within the taxonomy of Habanos brands?
I think it's I can only talk about Asia Pacific because that's where I live and work. I think it's up there for us with the Cohiba. It's a very recognized brand. People like it, and people are still fascinated by the story around it and everything else. And it's a good cigar.
And because there's not too much production, it makes it even more people want it more because there is no too much. So people want what there's not too much.
What they can't have, yeah. Any favorite cigars of yours? Do you have a favorite daily smoke? Or as someone in the business, are you always smoking something different?
Not really. I smoke, it varies. I sort of go
Do you smoke daily? Daily smoker?
Yes. Daily, everyday smoker. I think it goes with the business.
Yeah. What about yourself, Max?
My favorite cigar has been for many years now the Lucy box of 50s. The Lucy was, when it came, the boxes of 50 did not have a ring at the time. Cuba did not put any rings in the boxes of 50s. And I think that's my favorite cigar, and I have several boxes still. And I don't smoke it every day because you need time, but I always find time to smoke my cigar. For that I have time for.
I used to smoke Partagás 898 a lot. I like that.
Where have those gone? Why aren't those back in the market?
That good
Question
question.
for
I don't know.
Habanos.
They have had them for many years.
Yeah, and the Asia Pacific region just released a 898 limited edition or regional in a box of 10, right? Was it?
Did we do a box of 10 of 898?
Because it wasn't a box of 25, which I felt was kind of a little bit of
That I can't recall,
an
actually.
oxymoron. No? Okay,
But I think the idea of coming with boxes of 10 is because the cigars are becoming very expensive. So there's a lot of people that really like to buy it, but 25, I mean, it's really expensive. So people are very happy buying boxes of 10.
Yeah.
And
Now
the age
they're
is the
going to
same.
come up with box of 5.
Now they make it in box of 5.
Is that right? Yeah. That's like a weekend pack.
That's a weekend.
Yeah, that's
a
not
day
even
pack.
a day pack. I mean, that's something you grab to go out and enjoy cigars with your friends. I mean, I often joke that the only thing better than a box of 25 is a box of 50 or a cab of 50.
Yeah.
What I'm not so fond of is when they put the Trinidades in the little boxes, individual 5, because the cigar doesn't keep as well in the little carton box.
Yeah, no carton box.
So, no, it's easy to take to travel with. That's okay, but if I'm going to buy cigars, I don't buy in individual because I have my humidor. When I travel, I put my thing, and I think they stay fresher.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and they do that with the Trinidad ones. They come in the small little, some of the individual
In a box with 5 cigars, normally.
sleeves. At the Trinidad panel, I saw that you had so generously given some of these cigars to Ana Lopez, the panelists.
Yeah, because Ana Lopez was in the marketing here for many, many years, and she always fought with the Trinidad, and I said, it's really one of the best cigars I've made, really, and it's aged like really unbelievable. And Javier always, and he said yesterday that he's been smoking all his life Trinidad. That's his favorite cigar. And so I gave him one also because I know he enjoys that.
Gentlemen, thank you for your
thank you.
For your passion and of course for everything that you do to indulge us with these incredible regional releases. They're fun to collect. They're frustrating to find, but it is that pursuit of conquest that I think keeps connoisseurs and collectors of Cuban tobacco forever young.
Always good with a bit of magic.
That's right.
It's a brotherhood. The people, I have never met anybody in the cigar that's not a nice guy. I mean, sometimes you go, people drink and they drink too much and they are great. With cigars, I have never met in all these years somebody that's not, nice and he offers you a cigar. Sometimes you don't have a cigar, they give you a cigar and you exchange cigars and it's all like a brotherhood.
Yeah.
It's a big family.
Yeah.